Good afternoon. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting work session for Greeley Evans School District 6. We're a little bit late getting started today. It's for about 4:55. We've been in executive session and just got out of that. And so we'll call this meeting to order. And Ms. Lemon, will you give us a roll call, please?
Director Bentley.
Present.
Director Campos-Spitzy.
Present.
Director Mash.
Present.
Director Matthews.
Present.
Director Norwood.
Present.
Director Pappas.
Present.
Director Sullivan.
Present.
All board members present.
Thank you, Ms. Lemon. First on our agenda, you have before you our review of community engagement, calendar review and community engagement. So just everybody take a second, look down, make sure we don't have anything missing from this. Our next school visit is on the 12th, and that's at Greeley Central. Have another school visit on the 24th, and that's at Northridge. Plenty of other engagements that we have there, but is there anything that's missing off of that that you know of? We'll say on the 20th we also have the Evans State of the City Address. That's at 7:30 a.m. and they did move that specifically for us. So if you can make that, it's greatly appreciated. Anything? All right. We'll move right along to our legislative update.
Mr. Ball,
Yes.
do you want to turn this? We had hoped to have a summary of the CASB resolutions by now, but CASB didn't have anything ready yet. They won't have anything till later this week. But Mr. Ball and I do have some legislative priorities that we anticipate will be a part of this year's session that we wanted to visit with you about and see if there are other priorities that you all have that you want to make sure that we're weighing in on.
Thank you, Dr. Pilch, President Matthews, and members of the board. So in front of you, I just have kind of a short overview of, as Dr. Pilch pointed out, some priorities for this district for the upcoming legislative session. We were coming today prepared to talk about the CASB Delegate Assembly, which was last Saturday. Unfortunately, CASB is not going to be able to prepare us any information about that until Wednesday this week on the 11th, is when they anticipate getting some feedback on that. So unfortunately, we also did not have a delegate this year, just kind of given some conflicts. So we will see what the results of the CASB Delegate Assembly were. I anticipate there weren't any significant controversies, especially because we didn't hear anything in the news. On the other hand, there are a number of key priorities that I think that we should be focusing on. I'll be meeting with our district lobbyist soon, and one of the questions that she's going to ask is what are our priorities as a district, and is there any specific legislation that's out there that we would hope to make an impact on? And so these were just some key priorities, and I put by Nate because these are the key priorities by me, not by the district. But I do think that these are important areas that the district should be focusing on during this upcoming legislative session. So the first key priority that I wanted to talk with you all about is Senate Bill 23-296. Just so you're aware, Senate Bill 23-296 was a bill titled Discrimination in Schools, and this bill greatly expanded protections under Colorado law for discrimination allegations. And I will say that it made it very confusing for school districts as well as for how to conduct investigations for what action or behavior constitutes discrimination now under Colorado law. There are a couple of attorneys groups out there right now that are looking to clean up 296 to make it a little bit more clear. First and foremost, they want to eliminate the current definition of harassment and discrimination and revert back to the federal definition of harassment and discrimination, which uses the severe and pervasive language, meaning that it's only discrimination if the behavior is severe and pervasive, because right now under 296, single incidents could constitute discrimination that would be subject to a full-on investigation with full consequences. And there would be a lot of fact gathering and a lot of kind of he said, she said type fact gathering, I should say, in terms of what constitutes harassment and discrimination under new Colorado law. It's quite confusing. Not to say that single incidents can't be discriminatory, but determining when those single incidences are discriminatory is very challenging under this new law. And so I think having a tighter definition of harassment and discrimination would certainly benefit all school districts in the state in addressing those issues so that hopefully we can eliminate discrimination and ultimately have some idea of what to do as a school district. The other part that some attorneys groups are looking into cleaning up 296 is to revise and expand protection for bullying. So we know under Colorado law, bullying in itself is a violation of Colorado law. And so they're hoping to remunerate protected classes as part of the definition of bullying. And that would actually expand the definition of bullying and what constitutes bullying under Colorado law. And ideally, that would kind of get to a lot of what 296 was hoping to address, which was that school districts are addressing instances of bullying that are offensive to particular students and hopefully getting those students back to feeling whole again. And so hopefully, really when it comes to 296, it was just that school districts weren't doing anything, and now we have to do everything. And so hopefully we can find a little bit of middle ground with 296. But this is really a key priority for me. I don't know if anybody has any questions or how familiar you all were with 296 or if you had any concerns about this. The next area I believe is important is staffing needs. So we did discuss this. I believe St. Vrain put forward a proposal for the delegate assembly regarding special education staff. Really, when it comes to hard to fill positions right now in this school district, what we're doing is we're outsourcing a lot of that work to staffing agencies. So when it comes to a lot of the folks who provide specialized services for students with disabilities, we're outsourcing that work right now because we can't find and hire people on our own who want to do those jobs. And so it's becoming really challenging to staff a lot of those positions. I will say our HR department has done a wonderful job. They're still doing great work in terms of retention and hiring for these hard to fill positions. It's just really challenging right now given the current landscape. And so they're doing everything they can do. But ideally, some legislation would help kind of mitigate some of the concerns that we're dealing with in terms of filling those hard-to-fill positions, particularly when it comes to things like alternative pathways for special educator licensure endorsements. Again, we talked about special education last week or a couple weeks ago in terms of special education licensing, that they wouldn't have to go through the full process, that current educators could take a praxis exam with some additional requirements, and perhaps that could get them an endorsement without having to go through all the other hoops. We just have a need to fill positions, and I believe that any legislation that would help open the door to providing some easier ways for folks to do some of these positions would benefit this district in many ways. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts around staffing?
And Tom was here last time and gave us some input as well, correct?
Yeah, and
Tom doesn't love this.
Tom Gribble,
Yeah.
Mr. Gribble is our Director of
Yeah.
Special Education. His concern was just to
Yeah.
hand out licenses without any kind of practical experience, which ideally the legislation would address that, and hopefully it wouldn't be so open-ended. Because there is a lot of liability that we would be dealing with if we were just kind of handing out licenses left and right like that. So I think he's supportive to a point. Maybe much like our human resources department is as well. I can't speak
A
to
really nice induction program would help.
Yeah, like a year-long induction program or something like that. So, the next area is just updates to P-TECH. Again, we talked about this during the last work session, but I think just expanding P-TECH to allow ninth graders to start enrolling in P-TECH classes, to have more expansive work-based programs where students could actually work and earn credits while they are currently in school, to allow four-year institutions to collaborate as higher education partners would certainly benefit the P-TECH program, and then also include P-TECH courses in the definition of concurrent enrollment, because currently they're two separate programs that students are participating in. So ideally, if there was a little bit of cleanup with the P-TECH program, it would make our current program that much stronger. We're only one of a handful of districts in the state that offers this service, and it's really a benefit to our students. And so any more we can get out of this program, we certainly will have an eye towards. The last piece I want to talk about is with accessibility, House Bill 211110. We do need some support with accessibility and getting up to speed with these accessibility standards. I mentioned that there are going to be some folks who are going to be working with lawmakers on hopefully delaying the due date from July 1st of 2024 to sometime, hopefully a year, maybe 2 years after that, so that we can have time to make sure that all of our technology, both internally facing and externally facing, is accessible to everybody. We are currently working on this. We just had our first accessibility meeting. We are going to continue to work on this and focus on this, but nonetheless, any additional time or additional guidance in terms of what we need to do would be helpful. And so hopefully there can be some legislation that will be introduced that will have an eye towards providing a little bit more room to breathe with these accessibility standards. So with that, I don't know if anybody has any questions about these kind of priorities I talked about.
Can you just remind me what that accessibility, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so House Bill 211110 is a law that requires all governmental entities to make all of your technology accessible. And that would be, and accessibility means if you are an individual with a disability, that you can access our technology as any person, non-disabled person would be able to access it. It expanded the definition of who is disabled in terms of technology accessibility. So previously it was just individuals who had visual impairments, and now it's expanded to anybody with a disability under the ADA. And so how does that look in terms of accessibility is really challenging. And so we're looking at it, but we will probably do an audit over the next several months, maybe early next year, more realistically, into our current technology. I believe that a lot of it probably already is accessible. We just don't know that for sure, but my guess is a lot of it is not accessible, and that we're going to have to be working with vendors or maybe looking to new vendors who can provide this technology in an accessible way. So it's a lot.
It's supposed to go into effect in July 1st?
The compliance deadline is July 1st of 2024. And all school districts are scrambling right now.
Right.
Aurora School District is really spearheading a lot of the accessibility work, and they've been really instrumental in the work that we've been doing. But yeah, a lot of school districts are really struggling, and not just school districts. I'm sure all governmental entities in the state of Colorado are struggling. I'm not privy to those conversations.
But again, they're not going to tell us what we need to do until February. Am I getting these dates right?
Yeah, that's correct. So, the Office of Information Technology is to put out rules that we're to comply with, and so we don't even have those rules yet, and they don't expect that the rules will come out until February at the earliest.
So-
And there will likely be revisions, and so we might not even have final rules until April.
We've begun training our district leadership team. However, Teresa and her team are really paying attention to this. A lot of it's going to come out of their world, of course. So we've done training with district leadership team to let them know this is coming, to get them starting to think about accessibility in a different way than they have in the past. And but it is going to be expensive, and it's going to be very time consuming.
And I'm just trying to get a better idea of what like that translates to. So is it like you hit a website and it talks to you in case you are blind, but now you have access to the website, like because it just reads paragraphs to you? Is it that sort of thing? Like I'm just trying to wrap my mind around what
Well,
it
a blind
means.
person would have a screen reader.
Okay.
So, ideally would have a screen reader. But if the text on that screen is not accessible to them because, say, the font is weird or that it's too light and it's on a dark background and the reader can't read it, those are the kind of accessibility issues we're talking about.
Got it.
It's a very specific type of things that a screen reader may not pick up on. Or, for instance, there's an image there, which a screen reader is not going to be seeing, but there's no text to explain what that image is. So now every picture that we post would have to have text with it to explain what the picture is, or what the image is. Say it's a flyer for Ag Days at Greeley West. We'll have to have that in a text that reader can pick up.
Got it.
That is a lot of work.
It is a lot. and unfortunately, it expands out to our schools and our teachers as well. They're sending,
anything we
they're
send
sending
home.
communications home to their families that aren't necessarily accessible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because anything would send home.
And one other area that they're hoping to address with the cleanup of 211110 is to, if let's say we have some content that is inaccessible and thus in violation of Colorado law, that we would have an opportunity to cure that before we're subject to monetary penalties or something like that. Because a lot might fall through the cracks. Our goal is to not have anything fall through the cracks, but to be subject to a penalty every single time to a single plaintiff seems a little bit absurd, quite frankly. And so they are planning to maybe introduce some changes that would give governmental entities an opportunity to fix it before you'd be subject to some kind of fine. But we'll see.
Can we backtrack up to the updates to P-TECH?
Mm-hmm.
So, and maybe this is an obsolete suggestion or a mute suggestion, but we have the College Opportunity Fund, which covers, I think it's like $104 per credit hour for students that attend college in Colorado. And I know there's a limited amount of colleges, but it's, I think if you're 13 or over, you could register. Is there a way that we could maybe somehow manipulate to get Ames on their list, because we're not on that 2-year list?
So that's a
UNC is on the
completely
4-year
separate
list.
thing, I think, than
But wouldn't that
P-TECH
help with
is.
some of the funding?
No, I think it's completely separate from P-TECH. P-TECH
Okay.
is a program driven from the Colorado Department of Education, actually.
Okay.
And in partnership with the community college system. And so we had to adopt, there's certain strands of programs that you can adopt. And so we did a P-TECH in construction trades and a P-TECH in teacher cadet. And so you could adopt a certain strand. So what this would do is just allow for students to access at a younger age or to access at a higher ed partner, and not just those community college systems that have partnered with it. So it's they're actually two different things.
So complete separate entities. There's
Yeah.
no way to merge those.
I believe so. Well,
Okay.
it would take legislation probably to merge them.
So
I
we look
think.
at that list, they have UNC's on the list, but Ames is not, and there's a
Right.
2-year list. And
Right.
I've never understood why we're not on there.
We being Ames or
Yeah,
we being
sorry,
District 6?
Ames being on there, but it seems like that would just be
Yeah.
something that would
So we don't
kinda
determine who
help with
goes on
this.
that
Yeah.
list. The Colorado Department
Yeah.
of Higher Ed does that. And so they work with the universities or the 2-year schools to make a determination of who qualifies for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Director Sullivan. I made a note. I mean, certainly that's something we can look at. And I know the folks who are kind of behind this legislation, so maybe I can ask them a little bit more about that.
It would make sense to merge those two together to me, because you're trying to keep students in school and you're trying to keep them in the state of Colorado, and that's a huge funding.
Totally. Anything else? So, Dr. Pilch, I threw a superintendent update in there. I'm not sure if there's anything that you had to add. Or...
Yeah, I can share just a little bit. So there's the Front Range Denver area superintendents have landed on 3 focus areas to really put our energy into, and we've actually formed work groups and 2 of those areas are intended to influence legislation. So one is a school finance work group. So I'm now actually in 2 different work groups around school finance, but I am not on the statewide school finance committee. Well, we did try to get a Denver or Front Range superintendent on that committee, and none of us were invited to join. So, but the school finance piece is to continue to look at how we define and how we identify students who are at risk during funding. That's a big priority there that we'll continue to focus on. We'll also are really focusing on what is it, the factor for cost of living in relation to really like cost of paying your folks. So we would like to see a new definition of cost of living. I think a lot of us agree that in the 90s, when the School Finance Act was written, that it was appropriate for the 90s. It was a formula that worked for the 90s. The problem is it hasn't really been updated. It's only been tweaked a little bit along the way. And so we would look to try to influence that, as well as to try to influence additional funding for K-12. We know that, pre-K-12, we know that Colorado is still in the bottom 4th of districts in terms of funding in the state. The state of Colorado is in the lower 4th of states in the nation in terms of funding, yet we're one of the highest earners in the country. So So we would continue to push on adequate school funding, so that, because of course, what has happened in Colorado is it puts so much onus on the local taxpayers because there's not adequate funding from the state level. And so then local school districts have to go out for mill levy overrides and bond issues. There used to be a time in Colorado 20 or so years ago where you were required to set aside a certain amount of your money for capital project, of your PPR for capital projects. That requirement went away when districts had to make cuts in the 2007, 2008, 2009. Then that requirement went away to set aside money for capital projects. But the reality is there is no capability in Colorado to fully fund school districts and to fully fund capital projects without passing mill levy overrides and bonds. And so we need to keep talking about that and keep banging that drum about what the state's responsibility is in fully funding pre-K-12 education, especially in light of what we're seeing with preschool and some of the concerns that districts have around the preschool funding, and will it really come through to pay for our youngest children. The other task force that we're working on, that a group is working on, is the accountability task force. There's also an accountability task force statewide that is taking place right now. Their job is to recommend changes to the state accountability system that would then very likely influence legislation. My understanding is that committee has really struggled with moving around new ways of thinking around accountability. And so the superintendents are hoping to be able to influence that. I think we all know the way the accountability system is written now, it is intended to harm school districts with higher poverty, and that's the reality. And then the other piece is that we're working on as superintendents is just statewide pre-K through 12 messaging and messaging around public education. That we all agree that locally a lot of us do a really good job promoting our districts and promoting what we do with our local businesses or our local realtors, but what are we doing statewide to send the message about public education, and that public education is effective in Colorado and it's getting the job done for kids. So that's the other piece we're working on. And then, so we are planning to invite our lobbyists and our CFOs to the next Denver area superintendent meeting to further this conversation around school finance and what do we don't think anything's really going to change as a result of this school finance committee. What they're really struggling with right now is how to define rural, and that they may put some new definitions around what's a rural school district. But we don't expect any, from what we're seeing, there's only a couple more meetings. We don't expect to see significant changes in the funding formula as a result of that committee. And so we're all believing we need to be working with our individual lobbyists, working together to impact this through the legislation. You have any
Dr.
questions?
Pilch, is there legislation that you would propose or this group would propose around the messaging?
Maybe.
I know the
Maybe.
school finance.
Yeah,
but-
maybe.
Okay.
We'll see. And I'm not on that subgroup, so we'll see what comes from them. It may be that it isn't legislation, but it's really more of getting all of your getting communications people together from districts throughout Colorado to determine what that message should be statewide around pre-K-12.
As far as the school finance and the at-risk factors, so I think this will be the first year that we can't rely on free and reduced lunch. So when would that impact funding?
Well, we did do the free and reduced lunch form, so we have that data. What is hard and what we're still looking at is our way to work with the state to identify children who qualify for Medicaid, so that those children can automatically be identified. And then are there other at-risk factors that could be included as well that isn't just based on family income? Megan, what do you want to add to that?
So the Medicaid factor is happening now. So we have been able to qualify children based on Medicaid status. So that is huge. I mean, we've been shocked at the numbers. for our district. So that will help us in terms of additional at-risk funding. And then there's still some work to be done around how much census information plays into.
Yeah, we talked about census a little bit on Friday, and they feel like the census wasn't particularly helpful, at least what they were saying Friday. So,
Yeah, but it's written into statute.
yeah, that
so
we should
we'll
use
have
the
to
census data was
follow
written,
through with
yeah.
that.
Yeah. So then the other thing is, what are the other identifiers that might identify a child as at risk to qualify for at-risk funding?
So, I mean, they came up with factors for universal pre-K for those additional hours. So there was like kids in foster care, kids with, well, that one had kids with IEP, which is different. Yeah, just trying to think. So parents still filled out the free and reduced lunch form. Did you have less forms filled out since it doesn't? Yeah.
Well, and we've been seeing a decline in that over time because we've been providing free
Free lunch,
meals.
yeah.
And so there's not as much impetus to fill out the free reduced lunch form because we've been providing free meals for 3 years now, really. 3 years? 4 years? 3. Yeah.
We didn't start in 2020.
Well, the 2020-21 school year. Mhm.
This is our 4th year then.
Megan, just based on your response, I'm assuming that the number
Yeah.
of kids qualifying for free and reduced will go up because of using Medicaid as an indicator. And does that include CHP plus? Okay. So we have more students qualifying
Yes.
than we thought. Okay.
Significant.
That's interesting.
Which is why we need our CFOs in this superintendent's meeting because we're not in it day to day like they are. Yeah. Especially in the large districts. The small districts there, but in the large districts, we're just not. Make it like another meeting. Anything else you're wondering about?
Yeah, the last bullet I have is board priorities, and I noticed that I didn't finish the sentence. It's what areas of the law do board directors seek change, question mark, so if you want to fill in the blank. I guess I don't expect you to answer that today, but just, start thinking and reach out if there's an area of the law that you find important that we collectively can push forward. Just let me know. But I don't know if there's any priorities right now that you're all thinking about. Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Fall.
thank you.
I think we are to our debriefing of the work session. And Natalie, welcome to our District 6 work session. I won't make you go first, but we will get your you and Richard's comments at the end as well. We want to include you as much as we can. Okay. But Ms. Sullivan, will you lead us off, please?
As always, Mr. Fall, it's very informative and appreciate the detailed information you provide us and educate us on what's going on. Thank you for your time on that one.
I would agree. Thank you, Dr. Fall, and also Megan Spossler for all the work that she does to put the finances together. So.
Yep, I'll just continue with that and also the information provided to us in the executive session and just planning for the future and being forward thinking. And thank you to the 3 of you who presented to us.
Mr. Bentley?
Yeah, ditto. Just excited for the fall season and the end of fall sports and beginning of winter sports here soon. So, thanks, Nate.
Dr. Campos-Spitzy?
Yeah, not much to add, except just thank you to Megan and Nate for both the executive session and the work session.
Dr. Pilch, is there anything you would add? Okay.
No, thank you. Just thank you.
Richard?
I would also like to say thank you guys for having us.
And yeah, thank you for having us, and I think it was very interesting seeing how the legislative side works along with the board. So,
And Natalie, where do you go to school?
Early College Academy.
Early College Academy. All right. Ms. Pappas?
The same. Thank you for the presentations tonight. And I think I just want to express my gratitude that we do have in-house counsel. I think it's been a game changer. And then also for Megan, of course, for your work all the time. So thank you both.
Yeah, Ms. Pepys, I was thinking the same thing, that there was, for a lot of years, we did not have in-house counsel, and now it's hard to imagine
Yes.
how we managed without
Yeah.
having Mr. Fall here with us. But thank you guys also for your questions and for your comments and for keeping us on task and asking the right questions. I appreciate you guys as well. Work session's adjourned. We'll be back for our business meeting at 6 o'clock.